pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Good morning, Mr. Ali. I'm fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. Definitely had a weekend. There was some extra practice for resiliency.
Yeah.
Quit or keep moving forward. So that was the Purposeful Practice review for last week. For me, when I did my review, resiliency, where I've shown resiliency in my life is with grappling, wrestling and now jiu-jitsu. I've always stayed resilient in that sport, and it's paid off because I've done really well. And at the same time, on the other hand, it's something to where I need to be more resilient in. I got a bad taste of defeat by the same opponent using the same move, and it was extremely frustrating for me because I'm an extremely competitive person, and I hate to lose. But it was a reminder that I need to be even more resilient in my training. And I am a higher level competitor now, so I have to expect higher level competition. And
yeah.
It was a good reminder to stay resilient in my training.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, and I really think as we move forward in this episode, adversity is going to be a key term you'll hear come up a lot, and I think adversity is an opportunity to practice resiliency, and it's ultimately going to lead you to who you want to become. For me, I would say resiliency is something I've been really focused on recently is parenting. And, raising teens and having young adults at home, it's frustrating at times and it's challenging at times. And it's, quite honestly, there's a huge tendency when they get to a certain age to just be like, yeah, it's their life, hands off, you figure it out, get going. And for me in the relationship I have with my children, that's probably not the right answer. Like, I need to be more involved and spend more time with them, even if they're trying to push away. So I have to be resilient in my approach, and how do I make sure I'm spending the time to help them get where they need to be while still respecting the boundaries of them creating their own lives. So it's definitely a challenge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart. And think about it, they're cute and cuddly when they're babies, but just remember they're going to be teenagers at some point, and they're going to challenge you a lot. And it's definitely going to, for me, it's pushed a lot of my thought process and just a lot of how I viewed having kids to begin with.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jared. I definitely pull a lot of thoughts and ideas of parenting from a lot of what you share, so thanks for being vulnerable with that. Today's episode number 26 for the On Purpose podcast is...
That's 6.5 months delivering every week.
Yes.
Man,
yes, we've been at it, and thanks to the On Purpose community for keeping us going.
Yeah, and please, while we're talking about the community, please do us a favor. Go on iTunes, give us a review, give us 5 stars, some comments if you like what we're doing, so that we can reach more people and continue to spread the community. We're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, so please pay us back by giving comments and ratings so more people know about us. That's all we're asking as far as participating.
And even 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, whatever you believe, just give us some feedback. Obviously, if you're going to give us a low rating, we want to hear why, but any feedback is better than no feedback. So please participate. That'll help us and also help you, especially when you're participating in the Purposeful Practice. And it'll definitely help you with the title of today's episode, and how to be your authentic self. So this is something that I think we all struggle with, just being human beings and growing up being told, not to do things that we want to do, kind of having from a child being strayed away from authenticity, right? Hey, be quiet. Don't do that. Don't to where we conform. We conform. It's a natural thing. So Jared, let's start with how do you know who your authentic self is? Like, how do you know that you're being true to who you want to be?
Yeah, I think kind of like I hit on with the purposeful practice, I believe, in my experience, you really find out who you are and who other people are, those people that are around you, when you're in adversity. when you're faced with adverse situations, because that really gets past all these superficial behaviors, thoughts, comments, doing things to help get you to like me or make me popular. When I'm faced with adversity, now you get to the root of who I am and who you are. And I think that's why people struggle a lot with knowing who they are, and that authentic self is because we're so adverse risk. We look to move around adversity so much, and we're taught to take the easy road, and it's messaged to us so often that we really don't get in those tough spots early enough in our life to figure out who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think adversity is really going to highlight those key attributes to who you really are. And I also think trying a lot of things, right? We don't really know what we're going to enjoy in this world unless we've tried it, and that's with everything: food, relationships, hobbies, everything, to where I think a lot of us limit ourselves because we don't have open minds, right? We stay in the boundaries of maybe what our parents believe is the blueprint of how to live, or, friends, people that are very close to us. So, yeah, I completely agree.
Has there ever been a time or a specific moment that you can reflect back on and go, okay, when this happened, I knew exactly who I was supposed to be from here?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Because I think for a lot of people, there's defining moments, but I don't think we give them enough respect. And just like your story today in the purposeful practice, I will bet you in 20 years, when you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you've done your MMA fights and you're a cannabis tycoon, a moment we can look back to go, okay, I knew right then I had to make changes was this weekend, losing twice to the same guy with the same move. Because that's literally a image of life.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you can either say, okay, I'm just not good enough, I'm not competing anymore. Or you can say, no, wait a second, I will never let that happen again.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. This definitely was a defining moment. Leg locks. I've always been like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that leg shit. That's not my game.
Right. It's not
I don't
manly,
play that.
It's not dominant.
Yeah, I don't play that. And now I'm like, all right, I got my ass whooped by the same dude with the same move, and it's a leg lock. And I know that you're absolutely right. This specific experience will be the catalyst to that.
And I like when people stop for a minute and think about their defining moments. Because if you know it and you pull it close to you, then when you are faced with adversity again, when you're faced with a difficult circumstance, maybe it's not the exact same, because hopefully we've grown past that first one, but now you have strengths to draw from to say, okay, this happened to me, I chose to move forward from it so I can do that again here. And for me, I'll tell you, this is, and I don't know if I'm just different than a lot of people, or if maybe the way I was raised or the circumstances I was raised have helped create this, but I'm super hyper aware of moments. And I can tell you mine was 5th grade, which seems crazy, right? Like I'm mid-40s now. 5th grade was so long ago. I don't know how old, what are you, like 10 or 11 in 5th grade? But I remember I was the oldest kid in my family. We had moved from Germany to Maryland, and we had a good life. Like, we were a middle class military family, so we didn't have a ton of stuff, but we had food in the house and everything. And when we moved to Maryland, we're right outside D.C., and they broke up Prince George's County schools. The base we were on, to where we lived, they sent all the kids to a bunch of different schools because the area is predominantly African American. And if you were white, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, you were the minority. So they kind of bussed us to different schools, like desegregation, I guess, to get some diversity in the schools. So the school we went to was so far from our neighborhood. I remember being on the bus for like forever to get there. And this was height of the crack cocaine epidemic. So if any of you have watched New Jack City or any movies about New York City and the East Coast in the late 80s and 90s when crack was crazy, there were zombies everywhere. We were literally bused to like a crack ghetto. It was this, I remember as a fifth grader, the five of us in our little station wagon driving through this neighborhood, and people on their front porches yelling at us, calling us names, because I'm pretty sure they'd never even seen white people in these neighborhoods. And so I get in fifth grade, and I'm small. I was always small for my age, and I'm in this class, and I was the only non-African American in all of fifth grade. Not just my class, but no other classes.
Wow.
And they played this game when I moved there. It was called Fight the White Boy. And every day at recess, I would have to fight somebody. Wow. And it was crazy because I never knew who it was. I just knew I was going to get in a fight. So I would eat my lunch. And I remember I would have so much stress. My stomach was always hurting, I was sweating, and I hated going to school. I hated it. But we didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
We didn't have money to go to private school, and it was what it was. And being the oldest, I knew, I couldn't tell my mom, I couldn't tell my dad, because it just wasn't going to change. It would just burden them.
Yeah.
My parents were young, so they were still figuring out life. So I was like, okay, this is my deal to deal with. And I remember, fight after fight, I'd win some, I'd lose some. Sometimes they'd fight fair. Sometimes they'd sneak up on me. I never knew who they were going to fight.
Yeah.
And then one day, I don't know how it happened, but I was sitting in class, and I heard that this kid named Deshaun, and this is how crazy this moment is. I still remember his name.
Yeah. Wow.
30-something years later. Deshaun was who I was supposed to fight that day. And I remember sitting there, and, the teacher's trying to teach or whatever, and I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I was just like, dude, I'm done. I'm done letting you guys create stress. I'm done letting you just decide who's going to fight me, and I have no power in this. So I know it's not politically correct in today's world, but back then nobody seemed to care. I waited for the clock to get a minute before lunch, and I attacked him in the classroom. I flipped over my desk and literally attacked him in the middle of class. And it was a different world. Nobody called my parents. No cops were involved. I don't think my parents even knew I was fighting every single day unless I came home beat up.
You didn't tell them or anything?
No. I couldn't, man, because, my mom's a very emotional creature as it is. And she knew, driving us to this neighborhood, we knew we didn't belong.
Right.
They were literally, when we drove to a neighborhood, they're on their front porch calling us honkies and white people. And it was whistling at my mom, making noises at it. We were definitely not somewhere where we belonged. It was so unsafe. I think back now, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, how do we survive this? But, so I attacked Deshaun in class, and I was going to stab him with my pencil. I was literally never going to lose another fight at that school again.
Wow.
And it got broke up or whatever, and then they decided I was crazy. So then I was just a crazy white boy in fifth grade. But no one ever fought me again.
They stopped picking on you after that.
Stopped picking on me. And for me, that, I go back to that moment, and I'm like, okay, there's times you're going to feel powerless in life. There's times you're going to feel like everything is pushing you down and kicking you down. But you always have a choice to fight back. And now I'm not saying go attack people in classes. I know school's different nowadays, but fight back.
Yeah, and the moral of the story is great. It's the fact that even at such a young age, fifth grade, you were experiencing so much adversity that your true authentic self had to come out.
Yeah.
The true fighter in you who, it's fight or flight, and you chose to fight, and that authentic piece of you was brought out because of that adversity. So it ties in perfectly to the point that you just made.
And that's how, and honestly, that's how I live life. I am not the victim of circumstance. I'm never the victim of other people's plans. Okay, maybe it doesn't go my way. Maybe somebody betrays me. Maybe somebody that's supposed to do something doesn't do it. Okay, figure that out and move forward.
Right.
And that's really... That fifth grade, man, I still, when I think back at it, I think, oh, my gosh, it was awful.
Yeah, I mean, I can
It
only
was,
imagine.
and it was literally like one of the worst years of my life, which leads into when you listen to one of the last episodes where I talk about the importance of Bruce in my life and how angry I was.
Right.
I mean, I think it starts stemming from that.
Yeah, and that goes to show you how some of your core beliefs and core thoughts were generated at a very, very early time. And I think that's a very key piece to realize who your authentic self is. Really identifying who your authentic self is really identifying what your core values are.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny you say that because I had a very similar experience, and I was in the 5th grade to where I realized the importance of not only physical strength, but strength in my voice. And I've talked about it briefly before. My father had been physically abusive to my mother a number of times growing up. And the first time I actually did something about it was in the 5th grade. And I remember grabbing my dad when he was hitting her, trying so hard to pull him off, and never in my life wanting to be more physically strong, right? No other time in my life I wanted to have more strength. And he grabbed my Nintendo GameCube, a really hard game console, over his head, and he was about to strike her with it. And I remember yelling like, "No, Pop, not my GameCube," right? And the power of even though I didn't have the physical strength, the power of my voice was able to convince him to bring him down. Now look, I trained MMA and I do Toastmasters, right? And that's where the catalyst began in the 5th grade. I realized the importance of that through that experience, right? And another story, very briefly, that I don't think I've shared is honesty. You know, I realized that honesty and loyalty was a huge, huge core value of mine about 5-6 years ago with an ex-girlfriend of mine who I had just moved to Colorado. About 5 years ago, I had just moved to Colorado. She was in Texas. We were dating, and she was planning to move up to Colorado to be with me. And I had gone on a vacation with a friend of mine. And we went to a beach resort overseas, and I had cheated on her. I had messed up and drinking and cheated on her. And I remember just feeling such deep guilt and feeling horrible about it. Coming back, she was there, and I had to pretend like, everything was all good. And I felt so bad. The guilt was eating away at me. And I seeked out counsel from multiple people, and one of them being my father. And I just want to say, my father has done bad things, but he's a good guy. He's not a bad person. But I use examples because as a son, a lot of things that your father do are very impactful.
Sure.
And I don't think he gave me the wrong advice, but he gave me his advice, what he thought was the best advice. He's like, "Do you love her?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Well, you telling her that you messed up in a way is selfish because you want to get it off your chest. If you love her, pray to God, ask for forgiveness, and don't ever do that shit again. Like you can't be cheating on someone that you love, that you want to be having a relationship with it, and move forward. Just bury it, and you don't need to hurt her and traumatize her." But for whatever reason, I felt that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to come forward and come clean, and even though it was the hardest thing, I kind of surprised myself that inside I made that decision. I was like, you know what? Honesty and loyalty and my partnership is more important to me than like that self-forgiveness and not hurting her.
Sure.
And it's going to hurt me just as much. So I decided to come clean. That was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do, but I realized in that defining moment that, hey, honesty is one of my core values, and that is a part of my authentic self is loyalty and honesty.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's interesting because you're always – I think that is a perfect example of knowing your authentic self and knowing who you want to be will help you filter out good opinions from bad opinions, good advice from bad advice you want to follow, advice you don't want to follow. Right? So how do we act as our authentic self? How do we consistently behave in that moment?
Well, I think, Jared, it's what you and I just showed is taking inventory of these defining moments, right? And unfortunately, it takes a lot of adversity. It takes these horrible things sometimes to really be like, oh, wow. That is who my authentic self is. Like, I remember, same thing, my stomach was turning. I took a full day off of work to just go to, I think it was Wash Park, and sit in like this garden and just write all my thoughts. I was thinking, what do I need to do? But it was through that adversity, through that moment where I was like, hey, my core value is honesty. So when I get to another defining moment where, hey, I could choose to be a little dishonest here, I have to remind myself what is most important to me, what is true to my authentic self, and execute that way. So that's how I consistently behave as my authentic self, is taking inventory of what my core values are. And when I'm taken to situations, reminding myself of what they are. You know, I've written them down before, but now that I'm thinking about it, I could do a little bit more job of reminding myself of my core values, because I do think that they're so important. Even right now, all the business mentoring and consulting that I get, core values in business are extremely important as well. I mean, one of the most important things about building a culture, not, you know, in your business and in your community, you want to align with people who have similar values. Yeah,
for sure. And I think for those of you that are listening that are like, man, I just don't know if I've had that defining moment yet. As I look back, I'm not sure, especially for our teenagers. Here's how I suggest you act as your authentic self. Maybe you're not aware of that moment yet, is focus on who you want to be. That's one of the key things I stress to people is don't worry about what you want to do or what you do for a living, but focus on who you want to be. And if I know who I want to be, and this is something I have Trey do, and I'm big on writing things down so I can visualize it and then I can physically do it, and now I think about it, is 5 or 6 keywords about who you want to be. Then that's your framework for your decision making. If I know this is who I want to be, what decision do I need to make to be this person? And I think too many people are so focused on what they want to do. And this drives me kind of crazy, to be honest, when people come up to to Trey, he's going to graduate this year, and they're always like, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And I think, like, how much pressure is on that question for young people?
Right.
And the reality is nobody I know, not one person I know, is doing what they thought they would be doing next from that age to now. Yeah. None. Zero. So why as adults why is that the question we ask? What are you going to do next? Well, instead of that, I would encourage us to ask, help build their authentic self by asking, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
In life, when you leave high school, who do you want to be now?
Right.
Because what we do will change many times in our lives, potentially.
Oh, yeah.
And what you do is not who you are. And a place where I see this struggle greatly is law enforcement. Too many police officers believe that what they do, being a policeman, is who they are. Mm-hmm. And then they have very limiting beliefs after the career where they lost their identity, because their identity was tied up in what they did, not who they were becoming or who they are, which is quite honestly one of the reasons why more police officers kill themselves every year than anybody else takes from us.
Yeah.
And I think I want to ask people, hey, who are you? Tell me who you are. I don't care what you do, but think about a lot of social engagements, right? You go out networking, social mixers, whatever. One of the first questions people are asked are like, hey, hey, Ali, how you doing? What do you do, man? Yeah. And then I'm gauging you.
I say that all the time.
And think about it. I'm gauging whether I want to go forward in this conversation or I have nothing to get by what you do.
Right.
And think about this. What if I come up to you and I go, hey, who are you? And you tell me what you believe, then I'm like, okay, well, this guy's beliefs are kind of like mine. Let me explore this. Mm-hmm. Because how many relationships have we started based on what somebody does, only to get down the road and realize, I don't want to be around this person because what they do is not lined up with who we are.
Right. No, I love that. I think that's a new basis for much deeper conversations, that the only reason we always ask, what do you do, is because it's become habit.
And it's a surface.
Networking events, right, very surface. We keep very surface. But I love that. Another thing that I really like to think about and who do I want to be is, how do I make people feel? Yeah, right? How do you want people to feel about you? Right? For police officers, maybe it's a feeling of safety, right? I want people, when I'm around, to feel safe with their emotions, with their physicality. For me, I want to make, when people are around me, I want to have them feel inspired. I want them to feel like they can accomplish what they can accomplish. I want them to feel that I'm honest. I want to be humorous. I want them to remember me as, hey, I made them laugh. I feel good around this person. Those are a lot of the feelings. So I think that's a very good exercise, is how do you want people to feel?
Yeah.
Because people aren't going to remember what you said. They're going to remember how you made them feel, right? We're very emotional beings to where you see someone's face and we don't most of the time we don't remember specific statements or words that they said. You remember how you felt around that person.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's, an important exercise of really trying to figure out your authentic self is figuring out what type of feelings you want to have on people, because not everybody wants to make someone feel inspired or safe or loved. But if you find what you want to make others feel, I think that's a very good tool in figuring out who your authentic self is.
No, I love that, because if I want people to feel a certain way around me, right, and I want them to feel inspired, I want them to feel like everything is possible, that they can work hard, they can overcome. Now, what actions do we have to take to help you feel that way? Well, we have to do it, right? We have to commit to weekly podcasts. We have to demonstrate that we're taking risk, and we have to talk about things that didn't go well in our lives. You know what I mean? So it feeds back and forth, which to me then in turn allows you to be your authentic self. Yeah. Because you're actually doing things.
And at the same time, it's important to take inventory of how we feel around others or when we're consuming media in certain environments, right? I know when I go to Trials MMA, I feel great. I have not only the endorphins running through because of the physical workout, but because of the people I'm around, right? We're going to be talking about good things about MMA, outside of MMA, and it's a great environment that I like to be in, right? And then, of course, there's certain people to where you already know, I don't want to see this person. I never feel good around them. It's negative energy. So it's important to be aware. So what would you say, Jared, how does media and environment influence who you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm very conscientious on what I consume. So I think first off, that would be a tip I would share with our listeners and viewers is have a purpose for consuming something, right? Yeah. Like if I take a protein shake, well, I'm not just mindlessly drinking a protein. I'm doing it to replenish my body so it comes after a workout. If I'm on social media, I'm there to consume it mindfully. Like maybe I want to check in on somebody whose kid's fighting cancer, or maybe I want to see how Ali did in the grappling tournament. But I'm not just going to sit and mindlessly scroll and allow it to take over my mind. Right. The same with the movies, the meat, whatever you're consuming, have a purpose for it. And I would say, for me, my best growth and where I feel the most like, okay, I'm on the right path is when I'm reading probably 3 times to 1 over watching something. Right? Reading, like, because reading, and I've seen this, I think, oh, gosh, now I can't remember his name. It's crazy. What's the real rich dude? Warren Buffett. Yeah. Always talks about rich people and wealthy people. And I'm not talking about monetary riches and monetary wealth, although that's nice. I'm talking about spiritually wealthy people. Read. Poor people watch television. Yeah. I remember thinking about that, and I was like, God dang, that's right. I've never met one person that's up and wealthy that I'm like, I want to be like him, that sits and watches hours and hours of television. Oh, no way. But they're always reading books and they're always talking about what they've learned. So, to me, that's one of the best ways I can control that as far as what's influencing me is make sure I'm reading the right books. Yeah, and you make a really good point to where when it comes to your authentic self, and I said earlier that we have to try a lot of things to know what we really like, right? But we have to be real and realize that as human beings, everybody likes pleasures, right? Everybody likes tasty food. Everybody can enjoy a nice TV show. Everyone enjoys sex. Everyone enjoys things that feel good, right? Everyone enjoys that, and it's really important to know that the obvious pleasures in life aren't part of being our authentic self. The more that we can, and it's okay sometimes to have a purpose, right? Like being in the environment or consuming media. It's okay if the intent, like Jared was just saying, the intent is to just have a little enjoyment, right? Maybe the intent is for you to watch a movie and not, you're not reading and the intent is just to have enjoyment. But it's so important for us to realize that
that isn't helping build us to be the best version of ourselves, right? And that's the thing, is what we were touching on earlier, is in today's day and age, we can do the very minimum with no adversity, with just take the easy path, just sit at home after work, watch 4 hours of TV shows, just chill, eat whatever foods you want that tastes good, and have running water. You don't have to work for anything. There's no adversity. And when you sit in life consuming just these pleasures, when you make the pleasures a habit, habitual, and you're not reading and you're not going through these small adversities to grow, that's when you're going to live a very unintentional life without a lot of purpose. And I think it's just really important to just be aware of the fact that everybody enjoys pleasures, right? But the ones who live the most purposeful lives are the ones that really can derive pleasure from work, from things that improve you, from reading, from doing competitions, from improving themselves.
Yeah, and from reflecting on, okay, this didn't go well, so how do I learn and move forward, versus just dismissing it as something that was beyond your control.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about life is it's going to expose you at some point. At some point, your habits will come to the surface. And, for me, I'll tell you, I remember last summer when Trey's appendix ruptured. He had been misdiagnosed for about 10 days. They thought he had food poisoning, blah, blah, blah. Things weren't good. He kept vomiting, was sick. He lost 27 pounds in 10 days.
God.
We finally rushed him to the ER because he clearly didn't have food poisoning. He clearly wasn't getting better. And they find out his appendix had ruptured 10 days ago. It had been ruptured so long he was filled with poison and infection. So they rushed him to the surgery. And another defining moment for me, I remember, Trey and I have always worked out together. It's just been something we've done. He's always wrestled, so he's always in pretty good shape. And there's nothing more scary for a parent than this kind of stuff here. Is they're wheeling him back to the emergency surgery. You can't go with him. It's out of his outcome is out of your hands.
Wow. And
the surgeon looked at me and he's like, "Hey, he's got a great chance to bounce right back from this because he's in good shape."
Yeah.
And they wheeled him off. And I remember thinking in my head, what if that was me? What if I was on the bed? Would the doctor look at my family and go, "Hey, he's got a great chance to bounce back because he took care of himself"? Mm-hmm. Or would, instead of one cheat meal a week, I had 6 cheat meals a week. Instead of going for runs, I watched YouTube videos. Instead of reading, I was watching Netflix. And instead of doing the things that would allow my body to fight an infection, what if I took the easy road? What if I hadn't done that? What would the doctor tell my family? And then what kind of burden would that put on Andrea or my kids? Be like, "Oh, I hope Dad can survive because, he's not in good shape and he's smoking and he's drinking beer all the time. He's not doing the things he should have done." So I remember that moment, I was like, okay, I have to continue working out. I have to continue pushing myself because at some point, if I do catch a sickness, if my body does need to fight, I want to make sure it's prepared to do that. And I want to make sure my family has peace of mind knowing that I did what I was supposed to do.
Wow. Yeah.
Talk
about an influence.
Man, it's scary watching your kid get sent back to surgery, and you're like, hope everything goes good. You have no power, no control.
Yeah.
And the sad thing, and I bring that to this point here, is when adversity strikes, you're going to find there are times you're not going to have control. Mm-hmm. You're in the hands of a surgeon. You have no control. But you completely have control over how you prepared up till that moment.
Yeah.
And adversity doesn't give you hey, dude, in about 10 days, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, so you might want to get on the ball.
Right.
It's going to hit you now, and the only way you get to respond is by what you've already done. Mm-hmm. Right? So don't put off starting to do the things you know you're supposed to do. Identify who you want to become. Make sure you're taking care of your mind and your body, your spirit. Make sure you're enjoying this journey in life because it could be over in a moment.
Yeah, and regret is probably one of the worst feelings that us as human beings can experience. So let's make sure that we're staying true to our authentic self and not doing that. I know for me, media and environment influences me in a positive way because I have worked really hard to build up a quality environment and quality media that I'm consuming. And mainly I use media, primarily social media in this context, is a tool for adversity, for me to exercise vulnerability, right? Just posting, just sharing, and getting feedback on what I'm doing, instead of, like Jared was saying, mindlessly consuming content. Most of the content that I see is very good. Don't watch the news. You know, it's unfortunate right now. I'm seeing a lot about these Amazon fires, and I'm not as educated.
That were intentionally set.
Right, and I don't know too many of the details, but that's really some of the only negative stuff that I'm consuming. I'm not watching politics all the time, and it's really just good stuff. Right now, I just try to think of stuff that has kind of brought me down a little bit, and it's just the fact that I've seen these Amazon fires things. But other than that, really consuming some healthy things, because I'm very hyper aware of it, and I recommend that we all take inventory of what we're consuming, what environments that we're in, the people that we're around, so we can stay true to our authentic self. Now, that leads me to my next question for you, Jared, is we tend to conform, right? We want to, we especially in new settings, we want to fit in. We as human beings, whether we admit it or not, the most important things to us in our lives are relationships with the people we love, with new people. Everyone wants to be seen in a good light. So for you, Jared, when do you find yourself adjusting your normal attitude, thoughts, behaviors, maybe even straying a little bit away from your authentic self? When does this happen for you?
Yeah, for me, doing a lot of stuff in the public eye and speaking and getting to interact with a lot of different groups, there's times I have to change my language. And for me, that's probably the biggest shift you'll see is if something's going to inhibit the message being delivered to an audience that I think they need to hear, maybe, for one that's really easy is I say guys a lot. And just the way, from when I grew up, whatever, guys just meant everybody. Mm-hmm. And well, now a lot of times if you just say guys to a certain audience, you're going to offend people, right? For whatever reasons there are. And there's many of them. So now I don't want, if I'm there to deliver some points and help them, I don't want to use words that create barriers. So I'll be mindful of, language. What's this audience made of? Okay, this is a bunch of cops. Well, if I come in a bunch of cops and I have real soft language and very touchy-feely, a lot of them are going to dismiss me. So I have to get right after them emotionally first, and then we can shift. Versus, say, a chiropractic office where it's all females. Well, that approach for the cops isn't going to work. I'm going to have to soften things up and shift it for the chiropractor office, which is cool because that forces me to grow. So I don't think it's necessarily not being true to who I am. It's more, this message is important. How do I deliver it? So, and which is a shift for me, because in my 20s, my authentic self, I'd have been like, I'm telling you this, you deal with it and figure out on the backside. But then I realize now, how many people could I have helped more, but I might have offended them with a word. I might have offended them with my presence, my demeanor. Whereas now I'm more cautious and calculate, this is kind of the audience I'll be speaking to. What do I need to shift and who I might want to be versus what they need me to be? If that makes sense. Yeah. And I don't think that's a departure. I don't think that's being fake or phony, because I'm still authentically me. I'm still authentically telling you the same stories. Right. I'm just mindful of, what's the best way to deliver this to you? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a great example of being aware of your audience and not necessarily straying away from your authentic self, but having awareness enough to try and reach an audience in a different light. And that's the beauty of being a human being, is that we are divine creatures with vastness of characteristics, abilities, and we can be our authentic self while maneuvering and being chameleon-like, adapting to environments. I think that's a great example. For me, I think adjusting, I'm really grateful to say with confidence that lately I have been very effective at staying true to who I am and being my authentic self and not being shaken by many things to stray away from that. To
maybe try and think of an example is perhaps when I allow bad habits to run their course for a little while. When I stray away from my authentic self. I remember just a few months ago, I was drinking more than I would like to almost every single weekend for about a month, multiple days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and just kind of got into this little rut of drinking alcohol. And I'll naturally stray from my authentic self because that doesn't align with a lot of the other goals that I have. For me, occasional drinking and having a good time, awesome, but allowing that to become a multiple weekend thing would set me to stray a little bit, just enough to the point where I'm like, all right, I got to bring this back. And that happens. We're human beings, we make mistakes, and that's okay. But I think it's just important to realize who your authentic self is, who you want to be, how you want to make people feel. And even though it's not as important what you do want to do as well, right? But first figuring out who you want to be and how you want to make people feel, what you want to do. And then that way you'll realize when you are straying away from your authentic self, you'll be able to bring it back quickly, right? And make readjustments. We're not going to be perfect all the time. But the most important thing is to make sure that we fix things along the way to stay true to who we are.
Yeah, and if you don't have, then that's literally what I want people to understand is knowing who you are, how you want people to feel around you is your framework for your decision making. If I know those things, every time I'm faced with adversity, I'm faced with difficult decisions, well, I'm not just making a decision based on, well, today I'm around this group of people and they do this, so I'll do that. And then tomorrow I'm around this group of people, so I'll do it their way, which is kind of like, when I think back, that's a microcosm of being a teenager. As you're trying to find out who you are and who you want to become because you're uncertain. You'll try to do something to get you in the popular group. You'll do something to put you in the jock group. You'll do something to put you in the artsy group until you find who you are. And unfortunately, I think many adults continue with that mindset well past their high school days.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't really know who they want to be. They just kind of get caught up in the what we do in life.
Right.
And they're still trying to figure out these different groups. They're still trying to figure out who they're going to become. And the reality is, I want structure for my decision making. And that comes from knowing who I want to be. Mm-hmm. How do I want to make people feel, like you said? Okay, now I can make decisions that will be consistent.
Right.
Which keeps me on that path of, where I want to go.
Exactly.
When I don't know how to make decisions, now I'm bouncing all over the place, and it's easy to kind of give up and throw your hands up. Hey, I'm not making any progress. Well, you're not making progress because you're not making consistent decisions. You did it this way last week. You did it this way this week. You're doing it that way next week. Of course, you're not getting anywhere.
And that leads to be more undecisive. And that's where fear and stress and anxiety lives, is in the decision making, right? You don't know which way to go. But once you make a decision, that disappears because that's the path you're going. How is it easier to make decisions? When you're very aware of who your authentic self, you have hey, I'm an honest person. I'm going to be honest.
Yep.
Boom. No question about it. I'm not even going to lie. Boom. I'm going to tell you the truth, right? To where when you have these values of who you are, it's easy to make the decision-making process. So,
and here's something I want to add to that, because I 100% agree before we wrap this up, is you're going to be shocked. And when you are authentic to who you want to be and you really know who you want to be, all of a sudden you're going to start attracting people that also know who they want to be and how things align for you.
Yeah.
When you don't know, you attract similar people. And then what happens? Well, I think back to when I wasn't sure who I wanted to become and I wasn't sure in life. I think back to who was in my life at that point, and they were at the same place. None of them knew. Because I was attracting a bunch of uncertain people, and we were making dumb decisions on a weekly basis because nobody knew where we were going. And now I look now, and I'm very grounded. I know who I'm going to become. I know where I'm going. And I look at the people I spend time with, you and my sister and all the others that are around me. It's very much people that are also moving forward.
Yeah.
And we're different. We're not all going on the same path, but the fact that we know who we are and we're all progressing, it feeds it. right? And that's kind of that energy in life is you're attracting what you want to be.
Yeah.
Well, how do you expect to attract high-level performers around you if you don't know who you want to be?
Right. Amen. We are in a magnetic field for sure, and manifestation is a real thing. So if you are not manifesting your authenticity, we're going to give you some practice here to help out with that. And if you guys haven't gotten started on the purposeful practice, I highly recommend to start with this episode, because knowing who your authentic self is and who you want to be, how you want to make people feel, how you want to feel around others is a basic building block and foundation to your personal growth. I mean, this could literally be episode 1 on purpose, on the On Purpose podcast, because it is foundational and essential to you living your life with purpose, is knowing who your authentic self is. So again, remember guys, purposeful practice, submit it. You'll be getting feedback from Jared and I, and this is the differentiator of this podcast, is the fact that there's practice for you to live a more purposeful life. So let's jump into the 3 steps for this week's purposeful practice. Step number 1, write out, who do you want to be? Who is your authentic self? How do you want to make people feel? What are your values, dreams, and priorities in life? Take some time to take inventory of all this. Part 2, take inventory of where have you not been your authentic self and how can you improve?
And I think what you'll find in that one is when you're not your authentic self, it's because you're in groups with other people that aren't sure who they are as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can cause a lot of confusion if you're around a lot of people who aren't being authentic. It's contagious. And then, of course, the last and most important piece is email your findings to us, at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
Awesome, team. We love having you as our community. Remember, we are launching our first On Purpose workshop October 19th, 8 a.m. to 12 noon here in Fort Collins, Colorado. This is going to be a great time to come spend a morning with Ali and I. We're going to run you through basically how to create a blueprint to live your most purposeful life. We are limiting it to 20 people. It's up on our Facebook page now through Eventbrite. So go to our On Purpose podcast Facebook page, click the Eventbrite post there, and get yourself registered. 20 people only. It's going to fill fast. We're about 2 months away, right? Or a month away now, I guess. Where the hell are we?
About 2 months. About
2 months away. So get in there. It'll be well worth it for you. We're excited to take this podcast to the next level, which is meeting with our community and really developing individual relationships and team building.
Yeah, super excited, guys. October 19th, and very, very affordable price, $25 for a 4-hour workshop. Jared and I were talking, and I was like, honestly, dude, I think that the value of this would be minimum $500. Not to say, and this isn't about a money thing. This is to really help the in-person interaction, to help you create your blueprint to how to live your more purposeful life. We're going to have some awesome exercises, self-awareness, analytics. A lot of what we've been talking about here in the podcast applied to you on a much deeper level. And I'm personally excited to go through the workshop as an on-purpose community and have my blueprint to live my life with more purpose as well and build these relationships. Really excited to meet a lot of these members of our community.
And the reason for the price is I want your buy-in. We want you to be committed to showing up. We want you committed to working through the process with us. And then we want your honest feedback. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more important in our community than open, honest communication. So we are excited to get to meet all of you in person, to really spend some quality time with you, and to help you create that most purposeful life.
Amen. Thank you, guys.
All right, team. As always, remember, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. So get that practice in. We will follow up with you, and we will see everybody next week.